Hello, muddled thinkers everywhere, those who enjoy plowing through the dank, dark recesses of your minds. It is time for Unclear Thinking. I am Larry Smoke. That guy over there is John Bates. Say hello, John.
Hello.
He says
Hello.
hello. He says hello. And this is one of those cases where we really don't have a specific fascinating topic to peruse. We've been back and forth today doing our lame excuse for show prep and coming up with things that we've been thinking, because what got us thinking was we've had a friend who, and he's the senior member of our group of friends growing up. He's the guy. He was the old, always, well, of course, he always will be the oldest of the bunch. And he recently celebrated the big 5-0. And that got us to thinking about, of course, in addition to mortality, how different the world is now from when we didn't think about our mortality. John, you were telling me some of the things that got you to thinking. What was the first one you came up with?
Let's see. This is where I'm going to take a moment and disagree with you. And that I think that we do have a coherent thing today. It's a theme. It's we're thinking about the things that have changed in the world and during the time we've been alive.
Well, but we kind of stumbled into it, is what I'm getting.
Yeah. Well, like so many good things, it comes as a conversation. So obviously, the first thing that I would think of immediately and often is the internet, and I'm going to use the internet as the wider world of a completely electronically interconnected world. It's a wealth and world of information that's available constantly at your fingertips. When we were kids, if you had a research paper, you went to the library, and then you did your research at the library. These days, I can research any topic I want in my home in 5 minutes, and I can find out the answer to most questions, and I can get independent verification from at least 3 different sources within that 5-minute period.
I saw the science fiction author Jerry Purnell on a talk show a few months back, and and of course the subject was technology, but he was telling the moderator that he wrote a short story one time about a society in which there were machines through which you could find the answer to any question that had an answer. And he kind of looked at the moderator for a second, and then he said, and you realize that time is now. That time has come. We have machines through which we can ask a question, and if that question has an answer, we'll get it. I mean, 2 + 2 has an answer. The meaning of life does not. That's what he meant by a question has an answer. So yeah, that's the science fiction of 50 years ago. It's here.
Yeah, it's changed the way we do everything. For instance, you and I are in different cities. We are talking to each other. We are seeing each other. It's like Dick Tracy watches, except we don't need the watch. We could have the watch if we wanted to. Yeah, well.
No, we don't want the watch.
But, we can communicate with people instantly across the globe. It's changed our notions of what privacy and community means. Community is not necessarily the neighborhood you live in. I may not know any of my neighbors, but I may have a whole lot of close friends who live all across the globe that I speak to on a regular basis because I participate in that community. Privacy is no longer, I go inside, I pull the curtains, and I'm living my private life. Now, information on anyone is out there for anybody who cares to dig up about it. And if you want to be private about something, it takes a great deal more technical know-how. You have to understand. You have to understand encryption. You have to understand security. You have to understand what needs to be out there and what doesn't need to be out there.
You have to be tech savvy to not be techie in this world.
Exactly.
It's easier. It's hard to stay off the grid. You have to know how to stay off the grid.
Yep. It's changed our social interaction. People speak to each other and deal with each other in different ways. We did a show about that not too long ago. It's broadened the scope and ability of collaborative efforts. We don't have to have the great scientists of the world in one location. The great scientists of the world can stay home and still collaborate on any project they want to.
Creative people too. Writers and artists can work together across distance.
Right, and
often do.
It's changed the way news is disseminated. You don't read the paper and watch the evening news to find out what happened. You can find out what happened instantly at any moment. And unfortunately, it's also introduced the unreliability of news. I have numerous friends who have multiple viewpoints on nearly everything under the sun, and every single one of them can find articles, pictures, whatever they want to back up their points at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
Because anyone can post anything they want. They don't have to be
Yep.
credible. They don't have to back it up. They don't have to have sources. They just have to be able to do Photoshop
Mm-hmm.
or edit or find a particular quote that suits their purposes.
And if it's on the internet, it's true. So because we know that.
Yeah, Abe Lincoln said that. I believe.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. So what's for you?
Well, at the risk of sounding like back when I was a kid.
Well, you already do.
Well, that's true. I have noticed, and I've noticed this before, but you and I talking about it before we started, it really kind of drove it home to me. When I was growing up, my dad always tried to instill in me, and possibly my sister too, to always have some money in your pocket when you leave the house. And by money, he meant cash.
Yep.
And his justification was, and we lived in a rural part of the world, so it wasn't like we were taking taxi cabs or anything. But so if there was the possibility that we could end up in a car somewhere and the car break down and we'd be out in the middle of nowhere. So his justification was that if you have some cash on you and you break down out in the boonies somewhere and Farmer Brown stops in his pickup truck to help you out, he might not take MasterCard.
Right.
Yeah, you slip him a 20 to thank him for his assistance, but you can't hand him a charge card. I see so little evidence of people carrying money with them anymore, and I still do. I make it happen. I guess maybe to some people it sounds like bragging, but I don't mean it. I feel broke if I don't have $100 in my pocket, because you never know what's going to happen, and maybe that's old school paranoia. I guess it is old school paranoia, but there are so many folks that they live off their debit card, and I'm not necessarily saying it's a bad thing. It's just a change in mindset. I mean, and I guess
Right.
with electronic mobile payments gaining in popularity, and I'm sure it's more prevalent in metropolitan areas, but I like to think that I'm as techie and forward thinking as anybody of my generation could be. But I'm old school enough that I've got to have some greenbacks on me, or I don't feel safe.
I don't carry cash for roughly every couple of weeks or so. I'll get a 20 out, and I'll keep the 20 in my wallet, and then occasionally I'll remember it's in there, and I'll spend it $3 or $4 at a time, or $5 at a time, and that saves me the time of using my card and then entering the purchase in my electronically kept, for lack of a better term, check register, which can be, it can be a slower thing, but I don't remember to carry cash. I don't carry cash very often.
I guess it's probably good, if anything, that not having any cash on you, you've got a built-in excuse to not have to, give to panhandlers or Salvation Army buckets or, the Santa's ringing the bell outside of Walmart once a year.
And quite frankly, it's simpler. It's the electronic fund transfers, cards, phones, whatever your means of doing so is. It's convenient. It's basically having all of your money on you at any given point without having to carry all of your money on you at any given point. Now, once again, this is something.
Well, you're certainly not carrying all your money on you. Well, I certainly don't carry all my money on me.
No, but I'm saying because I have my debit card, because I have access to my bank account electronically wherever I am, basically I have access to all of my money at any given point.
Now, if anything, if I'm carrying $100 and 4 credit cards in my wallet, it's safer for me to lose the $100 than it is to lose the credit cards, because the credit cards, in essence, add up to about $45,000. The cash. I mean, somebody goes and buys them 3 tanks of gas, and they've gone through the $100.
Yeah, and if you get robbed, if you give them, if they get the $100, then they're going to know you're going to cancel the credit cards immediately. It might keep you from getting shot. I still don't have the cash. I'd have to toss him the wallet, cancel the cards, and hope he doesn't shoot me when he finds out he didn't get any money. What am I going to do there? But yeah, I mean, probably at some point in the, I don't know, 1500s, 1400s, something like that, some dad was having a conversation with his son going, I don't know what you people are on about this paper money. Money is gold. You carry it around. It's always worth the same. Paper is only good if the person who you're giving it to trusts that you have the money somewhere else and will get it to them.
And one slip with a match and it's gone.
That's right.
Gold will only melt. It'll still be there.
That's right. So, yeah. But yeah, you're right. I don't know many people who carry a lot of money. The fact that you carry $100 makes you an enigma and a weird thing in my estimation.
And I probably just set myself up for a mugging by admitting it too.
Yeah, well, the audience we have probably wouldn't mug you, and if they did, they don't know where you live.
I don't know, man. We both know some people of low repute. Hey, what else you got?
All right, let's talk about health.
Oh, we probably shouldn't.
Yeah. For the first time in modern Western history, our health is actually worse than previous generations. Medicine is better, and in some cases, health is on the rise, but overall life expectancy is not rising anymore. We are, in general, obese. We have high blood pressure. We have diabetes. Cardiovascular disease are on the rise. We exercise less. We eat worse. It used to be that eating out was the exception, and that most meals were made at home, and they were made from raw, fresh ingredients for the most part.
Yeah.
These days, eating out is the norm, and if you eat at home, chances are you're getting something prepackaged that you could throw together and cook as fast as you possibly can.
Yeah, that's changed just in our generation. I mean, as we've said, you and I grew up in a fairly rural setting, and I don't know about you, but I vividly remember your mom and dad bringing vegetables into the house, if not from a garden that we had, then from a farmer's market, somewhere nearby, and things being made with fresher ingredients at home, and I'm sad to say that you've hit the nail on the head with me. I'm just as guilty that I will, the wife and I, rarely cook here, and so we're just as bad as everybody else.
It's true for me too. I mean, I work late. I get home late. When I get home, I don't want to spend, even though when I do it, I find it to be actually kind of relaxing. There's something in me when I get home that says, you're tired. You don't want to spend half an hour or 45 minutes cutting, chopping, mixing, and cooking ingredients so you'll have a good meal, when you could just walk over and you could microwave this thing or open this can or put a couple of these ingredients together and have sort of an instant meal, and then go sit down and do whatever you're going to do for the next hour or two until you take a shower and go to bed. And it's hit our health overall. Insurance costs are rising because more people are depending on them. Now, part of that is that we're living longer, but we're not living
better.
Yes, exactly right. People develop sleep apnea in their 20s and 30s, mostly related to obesity. Sleep apnea leads to a highly increased chance of stroke and heart attack. Well, who am I telling? You know that.
Oh yeah. Not that I'm in danger. Well, I guess must endanger everybody else, but not that I have it. I run across it through my employment.
Yes, your professional life brings you into that sphere of happenstance. That was a strange phrasing.
But it worked.
Yeah. So yeah, our health is actually getting worse because of our choices. Because of who knows? There's 100 reasons it could be. We are busier than we've ever been, but we're so busy that we don't have time to take care of ourselves. Our giant commercial industrial society has created such that we have to work all the time, and when we're not working, they're convincing us to spend money on prepackaged, not great for us foods and entertainment options that don't actually require us to exert ourselves or go outside at all. And
I was drawing the breath to follow that same point right there. Not even just the eating habits of adults and the poor eating habits being formed by children, but the activity levels being formed by children. I keep hearing myself starting to say things, and I just sound like I'm the crotchety old guy. You kids, get off my lawn. But here it goes again. You and I, we played outside.
Yep.
Hey, we came along at a time when the Atari 2600 was in the house. We had of a sort, video games. So it wasn't like there was nothing to do if we stayed inside, but we did go outside and ran and did exerting things. And I'm sure as soon as I say that, 100 parents will jump up. Well, our kids do too. Well, your kids are the minority then, because Lord knows, I live in a neighborhood full of kids now. There are more kids in this neighborhood than I've ever been around before, and I see one kid shooting baskets a couple of houses down every now and then, and he's a teen, like a high school age kid. It's not even like he's a small kid. I can't tell you how many times I see groups of like elementary school, primary school kids, running up and down the street, or horse playing in backyards. I don't see it.
Well, I don't think it's just the kids. I mean, my immediate group of people that I know and associate with are fairly active and move around a lot. But that's because I know a lot of them from being active and moving around. Those are the people that I hang out with. However, I would venture to say that the majority of our age peers, people of our generation or the generation just after us, or the generation just after that, don't move around. We sit in front of the television, we sit in front of the computer, we watch a lot of movies, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, you and I've had that conversation in private before. That here you are a personal trainer, and I am always a little bit ashamed to even carry on a conversation with you, because I know in the back of your mind you're probably thinking, you lazy slug, and you wouldn't be completely wrong, because well, I'm not going to get off on a tangent of defending myself. But as much as I know I should exercise, and don't really mind exercising, I have other things that I like to do more, and I let those things, overrule my sense of taking better care of myself.
Well, and I think that statement right there, and I actually think that you're fairly active as far as our peer group goes, but that statement right there is that you don't have time to exercise. It's the generations before us didn't exercise; they were just active. They went out for walks.
Yeah.
They rode their bikes, or just for fun, or they did activities. They worked in the yard, whatever. They didn't spend most of their time inside. There was nothing to do inside for a lot of for them. Anyway, let's move on. What's your next?
Speaking of seeing kids, I've noticed this before I moved in this neighborhood, and I'm not singling out any of my neighbors, because the Lord knows it's not any one particular set of parents. And I almost feel guilty saying it, because I'm not a parent. So of course the first thing any parent would say in response to me is, "Well, you just don't understand." Well, that may be the case. So tell me I'm wrong. I get the impression that kids today are this is probably a terrible choice of word, mollycoddled so much more than they were in our day, and certainly in days prior. You've seen the memes on Facebook timeline feeds. In my day, we played out in the yard and skinned up our knees and climbed ladders and rode bikes out of sight of our parents, and and came home after the sunset and blah 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 blah, and rode around without seatbelts, and we lived to tell the tale. Well, yeah, because our parents weren't living in fear of every movement we made leading to our injury or death.
Yeah, that's a giant cultural shift.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't understand the mindset of overprotectiveness that it seems our generations and younger generations parents parenting seem to have.
There. It's absolutely there. I mean, schools across the nation and internationally are banning playgrounds, getting rid of playgrounds, because kids can get hurt on a playground.
And my wife is an elementary school teacher, and she is not allowed to take her kids on the playground if the temperature is below 50 degrees. Damn.
Yeah, there's some places where kids can't do cartwheels because they can get hurt. I read not too long ago that there was a case where a set of parents was actually in trouble with their local municipality because they were letting their kids walk home from school
Yeah, and
The horrors, the kids walking
yeah,
home from school all on his own.
there are folks in my neighborhood that I see. In my neighborhood is your typical carbon copy cutout house neighborhood. I mean, so these houses are not 60 feet off the street. It's not like it's a quarter-mile long driveway off in the middle of the woods somewhere. And I see parents parked at the end of their 60-foot driveway, if it's even 60 foot, sometimes even shorter than that, with their kids in the car with them, waiting for the bus to come. And then when the bus comes, the kid gets out the car and goes to the. And I say kids. There are two like that in this neighborhood, and I've seen others as I drive on my way to work. They're like that. And again, here's the grumpy old man in me. When you and I were elementary, middle school age, I lived at the end of a quarter-mile long path to a house back behind the tree line. I had to go out to the street, wait for the bus. My butt walked out there in the dark and stood there by the road. And when the bus came, I climbed on. Rain, cold, ice. I put on a dang coat and I walked out there and stood and waited for the bus. And you don't see that anymore. Were we that much tougher? Were our parents that much dumber? What was it?
Well, I think it's an attitude of fear that's got society. We all think that the only legitimate way to live is to live a life of absolute security, and it's not possible to live a life of absolute security. I mean, even today, all of the a huge amount of the political talk is, how can we be safer? How can we? You can't be safer. You're either going to live your life or you're going to be be afraid all the time. If you want to be safe, die. You're safe when you're dead. That's pretty much it.
And that's a freedom versus security discussion. That's an entirely different argument. Yeah,
and a very old argument too. Yeah, when I was 11 or 12, we lived on a local seacoast island, small place, not a huge community. But my brother and I, and he's 2 years younger than I, used to ride our bikes around the entire island. We'd be gone all day, and we'd show up when it was time to eat. And that's just the way things were done back then.
Because your folks understood it's an island. There's only so far you can go. If you don't turn up on time, there's only so far that we'd have to go looking for you.
And I admit that the interconnectedness of the world has led to A, greater knowledge of the things that can happen, and B, greater opportunities for the people who would do those things to do those things.
Yeah.
So
I've said before that I would imagine, and I'm pulling numbers out of thin air just to make the point, so don't quote me on statistics. I'm just making up the numbers to illustrate the point.
Remember, send your emails to
there you go. Attention, Smokey, you're a stupid meathead. I'm sure that if there are 5% of all deaths are attributable to serial killers now, I'm sure that there were 5% of all deaths in the 1840s attributable to serial killers. 5% of 100,000 people is a lot less than 5% of 20 million like now. And again, I'm just making up numbers but to show the point. And because of the vast increase in media and access to media and flow of information, we hear about it.
Yeah.
Whereas serial killers in the 1840s, you never heard about them. So there's more people are hearing the bad news now and letting their imaginations run wild. Whereas, again, pick a time frame, 50, 100, 150 years ago, you didn't hear about it, you didn't know about it, you didn't worry about it.
Yeah, well, with a brief divergence into philosophy, my thought is that when we try to control more and more and more and more things to develop greater and greater security, you really can't control much of anything. Most of the world is outside of your control, and the more you try to control, the more insecure you feel about it, and then the more you try to control, and you get caught in a feedback loop, and suddenly you don't have a life to live.
Yeah. Well, what else you got? Let's stop making me bellyache about the way the world is now.
All right, let's talk about
enlighten me.
Let's talk about work. So,
God, you do keep bringing up the drag subjects. I just got home from work.
It used to. Hey, you're actually going to be someone I'm going to use as an example.
Okay.
It used to be that when we were growing up, the ideal was you grew up, you picked something you wanted to do, you got your job,
Mm.
you worked that job for the next 30 or 40 years,
Mm.
you retired from that job, you got paid a pension,
Mm.
and then you did your retirement until you died.
Mm.
Those days are gone.
Yes, they are.
It's rare that anybody, average job tenure is less than 5 years these days. Average job tenure.
And it was,
Uh,
yeah, and shoot, it was less than 7, not too long after you and I were out of college age. And
yep. And frankly, if you have a resume, because most resumes go back about 10 years, if you have a resume with one job on it, you are an extraordinary person.
mm,
And you personally have a resume with considerably longer than 10 years on it,
that's
which makes
true.
you a freak of nature.
That's true. I'm coming up on 18 years at my current position. So.
Yeah. And that's very rare. But it's not just part of it is employees are always thinking, well, I'm going to make climb to the next position. I'm going to get a better job. I'm going to get a better promotion. And that means that I'm just going to keep moving from job to job to job, whatever offers me the most.
Mm.
But part of it is the fact that companies do not really value or reward loyalty beyond a certain point. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's not like you can go into a company, do a good job for them, and know that they're going to keep you around.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to keep you around as long as it is useful for them to keep you around.
Yeah.
And at some point, they're not going to keep you around probably.
Yeah.
And when the company's not loyal to you, you tend not to be loyal to the company, and
Mm.
we get a very, very fluid workplace environment.
Mm.
I
Well,
mean,
and not to take up for the man, but just to play devil's advocate, it's not even just that employers are more fluid in their sense of loyalty. The marketplace is so much more fluid. The economy is so much more fluid. Industry throughout the late 19th and 20th centuries, the automobile industry, the soft drink industry, the
right?
airline industry, those industries didn't change much over the course of 50, 75 years. The major industries today, healthcare, technology, transportation too, they're changing every 3 to 5 years drastically. We just discussed in the last show, Ford Motor Company has been around for 100 years, and they've just recently said, oh, we're not an automobile company anymore, we're a transportation company. Well, they have to, because the society, technology, industry is changing.
Yep.
And because these industries change, we may have hired these people to do X, but we can't do X now. X doesn't make any money. We've got to do Y.
Yep.
Now, if these people that did X can do Y, great. But if they can't, hey, we got to have people that can do Y.
You're absolutely right. And I don't think it's
I mean, the man's still a pig and only out for himself, but I mean,
well, yeah, that's a given. That's a given. But I don't think it's a startling coincidence. Like you said, the industries change every 3 to 5 years, and the average job tenure is less than 5 years.
Mhm.
Even a very common practice among even the higher echelon management these days. CEOs tend to company hop.
Yeah.
They will get in a position. They will
The
do
Fortune
what they
500
can.
ones do anyway. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, they'll get in a position. They'll do what they can to drive short-term profits as high as they can get them, and then they will use that spike to show that their resume looks good for doing exactly that sort of thing, and they'll hop to the next company so they can drive profits there for 3 or 4 years, and then they'll hop to the next company. That's frankly, it happens among the every level of corporate society these days.
And it puts people, our generation and younger, the responsibility for preparing for their golden years, air quotes, a lot more on their shoulders than employers than ever before, as opposed to it being on the employer's shoulders. I mean, yeah, as you said, once upon a time, you did your 35, 40 years, you got your goal watching a pension, and you could, I'll make the house payment and I'll have groceries and I'll be okay. And that's not necessarily the case. I mean, you don't stay at a place long enough to generate any kind of equity in any kind of pension plan, and B, even if you did, there's no guarantee that company, that industry, would be liquid enough to provide you one. And we're living longer, so we would milk it more if we did.
Yeah, if you're lucky, your company offers a 401k, and that 401k is something you're going to carry from job to job, or another retirement plan. You're going to carry it from job to job. But frankly, unless you're working for a state or a federal government, there's not going to be a retirement plan that's going to hold it. And that might be a reason that people, when they get a state or a federal government job, tend to stay in those positions for a lot longer than 5 years.
And if you're not, again, if you're private sector, then it's going to be mostly on you. I was joking with a business colleague yesterday. He said something about retirement. And I said, retirement, yeah, right. I mean, I'll work at this place till they throw me out, and then I'll sit at the house and last as long as the money lasts, and then maybe the mailman will smell the decaying corpse, and they'll know, okay, we can bulldoze this house.
Well, your wife's a teacher. That's a state job.
Well, there's that. Maybe she'll carry me for a while.
There you go.
Well, folks, at the risk of us sounding like the grizzled, stodgy, old, grumpy farts that we warned you we would, we hope you made it through the show and enjoyed it. What's different about the world in your eyes these days? Let us know. We'd be curious to hear what you think. unclearthinking@gmail.com is how you can get an email to us. As usual, on social media, facebook.com/unclearthinking. We're on Google+. Search for us, Unclear Thinking on Google. You'll find us. You can tweet at us as usual. John is at...
I am at Cuhullen, Cuhullen.
And, of course, I am at LA Smoke, at the Twitter and all social media. You can find me at LA Smoke. And, of course, the website, unclearthinking.com, show notes, any articles we referenced. We didn't today because, as we said, we kind of pulled this one out of our creative butts. But anytime we reference anything external source, we reference it there in case you want to check it out yourself. So, I guess on that note, since it's getting on about time for the roosters to start crowing, I may have to go to bed pretty soon and take my Geritol. I guess we might better call it a night, so...
Yeah, and butt topics are the best topics.
There you go, yeah.